Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. All right, ladies and gents, welcome back to another episode of Blue Grit Radio. This is your host, Eric, and today we're going to be talking about a critical theme that we frequently talk about and I write about, which is over identity, making plans, kind of the next step, and how do we healthfully balance our law enforcement identity, but then also think about the future and contingencies and all these things, right? Whether it's retirement after a quote unquote full career or whether it's next week for things that we can't control. And so I'm happy and pleased to bring on Jess Flores from Next Shift, the Next Shift page and also podcast. But Jess, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I love having this topic of conversation because it wasn't one we used to have, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just come up, and even in like episodes and conversations that I don't intend to go there, it frequently comes up. And I think it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, right? Like, so retirees recognize like that's a really a rough transition for many. And so, we've had folks on the show of all ranks, right? Like line level, full career, or detectives or brass or whatever their trajectory was, and then just recognizing like, yeah, this is a huge part of my identity. I'm so proud of it. I had the community, and then all of a sudden, it's not like stripped away, right? You still have other connections and things, but it is a drastic difference. And then couple that with the last few years, I think more than ever, law enforcement has probably recognized that, hey, maybe this job won't suit me forever, or something may happen where my family is saying, hey, please, like begging you to leave. And we've all had colleagues that's happened, and no judgment. I've said it a million times, like whether you do 3 or 30, like, thank you for your time, your service. But beyond that, like it's tied integrally with wellness. And what I mean by that is like the longer someone is doing something where they feel stuck, like it's not serving them or anyone else.
Right.
And so for those reasons, like I think it's great that that we're having the conversation. Jess, you being a former law enforcement officer with your own background and experience, and we'll get into that. But now that you speak and you share and you coach people on making that transition out of law enforcement into other industries.
Yeah, that's definitely nothing I thought I'd ever say in my life, that's for sure. I was a lifer. That was the goal, like to retire from this career. And I know we'll get into it, but I had 2 different departments. In my second one, I thought I had learned everything from the first one. Don't over-identify as this. Don't only hang out with cops. Don't, do all of these things that we typically do, especially when we're young and when we're newer officers. But man, I will tell you, the second I no longer had that career, even though I didn't think at the time I was over-identifying with it was all I could think about. It was,
Yeah.
wow, I don't know who I am without that. What the heck do I do? And that was definitely a struggle. And I was only 10 years in, so I can't even imagine. I've only heard the stories of those 20, 30, 35 years into this career. And they're like, my entire adult life, I've been a cop. What do I do? And it was something that we never talked about. I mean, I got out 8 years ago and it was not a topic of conversation, and nobody was leaving the field. And if they did, it was so quiet. You were just like, where's so-and-so? All of a sudden you didn't even know that they had left.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I wrote about it a while ago. I think it was a blog post. I don't remember if it got published or not, but it was just essentially like called the backup career. This notion that we in law enforcement work and succeed off of contingencies, right? Like you roll up to a call, you have like very limited information, and you have a spider web of options that you recognize this call could go towards, and you have responses for that, right? Because you have a tactical brain, you think in these ways, you're going to deal with it as it comes to you. You have a backup gun, you have a backup light. Some people have more than one, like all these things. And like the whole career is built around contingencies and reaction. And yet so often when you ask people, and I made the habit of asking people pretty upfront, especially following 2020 with my crew when I was a patrol sergeant, was, hey, what's your backup plan? And And I made sure that it was not in this vein of like, hey, think and plan for a worst case scenario. I mean, kind of, but really just say, no, like, what interests you? What intrigues you outside of the public scrutiny, outside of something bad happening to you at work? I mean, it just could be completely elective where you're just like, yeah, my heart's not in it. Or like we all know, like we see these accidents happen to people all the time at work. Like, what if you just take a bad spill, like on your day off,
Yeah.
like going to the dentist's office and you're like, I don't know if I can recover from this injury or car crash or whatever have you, right? Like, not to doom and gloom, but let's plan responsibly. And so we had those conversations where people would have to generate within themselves, like, what did intrigue them. Maybe it was an old thing that was really fun
Hmm.
back in high school or college to learn about, where they could see themselves going back to school or a trade or what have you.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things that oftentimes we do get that tunnel vision when we're in our career. We can't really see outside of that lane, or say we're going for a promotion or something like that. That is the focus, and we can't see outside of that. And it can be very detrimental when we don't have a sergeant or even a mentor or a friend who's willing to have that conversation and like spark it. Again, when I was in, those were not conversations we were having, and it was
Mm-hmm.
detrimental, I feel like, because you got to that I'm just stuck point. And I talk to people all the time about, at least our academy taught us, hey, when you're out driving around, just think of every scenario that could happen and how you're going to respond to that. When you look at going to the academy, for God's sake, you spent time prepping, hopefully, to get to the academy. And then you
Mm-hmm.
spent 4 to 6, 7 months in an academy prepping for what this life looks like. And then we just think, okay, cool. We don't spend any time prepping for what it might look like after, unless maybe you're at the very end. But also, you're not like, man, if this were to end tomorrow, what the heck would I do? And it is one of those things you have to find balance in. We need a specific mindset when we're going out there every night and thinking I'm going home at the end of this shift. But at the same time, like, God forbid I get hurt. And like you said, you could be twisting your ankle on a sidewalk. Nothing
Yeah.
fun, nothing fancy. And something I've seen not only in conversations I've had, but on the podcast is how many people are actually giving a shit about their mental health. And that
Mm.
is a way for them to change how they think about this job, and then priorities shift. When they have a family, when they have that first child, maybe their outlook on law enforcement typically changes. And I can't imagine it wouldn't. Like, that's how it should happen.
Yeah.
And so it's been one of those eye opening experiences for me. I don't have children, but to see people take their family more seriously, to take their mental health more seriously, I'm like, wow, this is this is a whole new thing, and I am absolutely here for it. But it's also one of those things where plan for that. If you think in the future, I'm thinking about having a kid, how can you set yourself up now so when that kid does come into your life, you can still stay in the job you love, but you're in a more maybe safer position. You're in a better position to be there for your family and have those nights off or those weekends off, minus call outs and things like that. Just like you said, strategically think about this. Like, what is it you want your life to look like? And hey, if this pitfall or this pitfall comes up, what's a way I could step around that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like the power of positive belief and positive mental attitude. And some people may say like, I don't want to think about it, the worst case, and I don't want to think about if I can't do this job or like break my back or what have you. Um, but let's be real, like it's practical, responsible thinking, and then
Mhm.
I'll even add on the notion that whatever it is that you start diving into, it might sound counteractive, but taking time away from the industry or like this specific profession to learn something else will only help that. And what I mean by that is if you like numbers and you're like, man, I never finished my BA, like I just have an AA, and if I wanted to get into career in finance, maybe I should finish that. Cool. Like recognize that if you have an acumen in numbers and aptitude, right? It could absolutely help you with whether it's financial crimes and looking at statements. It could absolutely help you with helping with the training budget and
Mhm.
trying to figure out like how you can maximize your dollars for gear for your people or classes. And so whether it's that or communications, writing, psychology degree, like, yeah, that's all going to help you do the job better, and then also help you just with all these tangible skills outside if it should happen or if you choose for it to happen.
Yeah, so many options. And it's something I never had this throughout my career, was a career planning. Like, no sergeant ever sat me down and was like, hey, Jess,
Mm.
like, what are your goals? I made it very known to everybody what my goals were, and I wasn't going to shy away from it. But
Yeah.
I
What was
never
that?
had somebody sit down and say, like, hey, what are you thinking, here and here? And let's try to get you to these trainings. Or, hey, if this kind of case comes in, like, let's get your help on this case, or, anything like that. And so when I became a sergeant, I made sure that that was one of the things I did. But when you look at it and you look at a police career, I had several patrolmen at my last department when I was a civilian. They'd be like, oh no, I really love finance. I don't know what it is about cops and finance sometimes, but it is a career field that so many have gotten out and gotten into. And I'm like, huh, okay. So I would ask them, okay, so are you like taking extra time on your financial cases that you're getting? Are you taking the time to learn a little bit more about the back end of that or how everything integrates? Are you going into the detectives and talking about this case and really getting into it? What trainings can you be sent to while on the department that they're paying for it?
Mm-hmm.
The schooling, a lot of departments, most departments have tuition reimbursement. Utilize those things,
Yeah.
use your resources. And I know most of us get to that. I can't take one more thing on my plate. And that is good to understand when you have bandwidth and when you don't. Obviously, your job safety is more important than those things. But figure out a way to make it happen. Take a class a semester. Take, a class here and there, or those trainings where you're just getting days off and you're getting to go to them. Figure out what those things are, whatever path it is that you even could consider. Cybersecurity, another one. Get into those things. Talk about those things a little bit more than that surface level. Let me just take your report and get the hell out of here. No, dig into that and really see how things interweave and how you can play a role in that and how you can present a better product to your detectives. And then when it goes to
Yeah.
court and such.
Yeah, I love that. And you went into tangible things that I was hoping to get to, which is, everything you explained as far as like how to lean into learn this thing, like be curious, be hungry. Like it's a, it's like a multi-headed hydra. Like you're hitting it from multiple angles and you're doing one thing, which is just like dive in, learn more, right? Be
Yep.
curious, right? Invest yourself. And it's going to make you better at being a cop, right? Everything you described, I could have said, hey, you want that specialty or you want that assignment on the task force? Like do those things, right? Network with people, seek mentorship, seek feedback, do your own research, really try to explain the whole thing, not just like what you need for probable cause, write it up, pass it on, move on to the next, like check back in, follow up, right? If you can explain all that, if you can understand it, I mean, how much better are you going to be on the stand, right? So it's about holding accountability, it's doing your job, but then literally all those things you were saying for the purpose of developing yourself for a different industry, right? For the private sector or a different industry in the public sector and so on. So I love that. I want people to reflect on that. One thing you said with folks knowing what your goal was in law enforcement, what was that? And also if you could talk about kind of your transition and what that experience felt like, which may have prompted what you're doing now.
Yeah. So my original goal way back when I was like an 18-year-old kid and probably even before that, I wanted to be a voice for the victims who couldn't speak for themselves.
Mm.
That phrase right there is what resonated with me for so long. And to back up a little bit, when I was 10 years old, my grandpa, who was the only other police officer in my family, died 6 months after retirement. And seeing the law enforcement community at that funeral, I think was my first like insight into what it's like to be part of something bigger than yourself.
Mm.
It was that same year that OJ Simpson got off. And in my 10-year-old little brain, like, I just thought that is such an injustice. Like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
It was also that next, 5 years where several things happened, the Oklahoma City bombing, all these school shootings. You're seeing officers running toward this horrific thing to help other people. And it was just something within me. And then the older I got and more cases that came out, I was a big court TV fan. Don't make fun, but big court TV fan. And I would sit
No
there and
judgment.
I would watch these cases and just see some of the injustices happening, or wow, that victim really needed somebody who could speak for them a lot better. And it just was something that resonated with me for whatever reason. And so I remember being that little 20-year-old at my oral board for my first department, and they asked the basic question of, why do you want to be a cop? And that was my answer. I want to be a voice for the victims who can't speak for themselves. And they just kind of like looked at me funny because they expect I just want to help people, which I
Mm-hmm.
mean, in a roundabout way was the exact same answer, just
Yeah.
a more
Yeah.
dialed in version of exactly how I wanted to help people. So again, I got hired. I worked in the most dangerous part of our city, Kansas City, Missouri here. We're not a huge city compared to some of these cities out here, but we're a large city for the Midwest, and a very violent city for the size that we are. And that was an eye-opening experience coming from a very small town, and we had plenty of victims that we could speak for. Unfortunately, a lot of those victims just didn't trust the police in any way, shape, or form, and you weren't really getting to speak for them necessarily.
Right.
After being shot at 4 years in and watching my department not give a shit about it, because I didn't get to shoot back, it wasn't considered a critical incident. It was like, come
Mm,
back to work the next day, please.
man.
Nobody checking in on you or anything like that. And it was just one of those eye-opening, like, well, if they don't care about me, my department now doesn't care about me, what am I even doing here? Like, what
Sure.
difference am I going to make, and who am I speaking for if I can't speak for these people? So I decided to leave 4.5, 5 years, 4.5 years in there. I took about a year off. And when I went back to my second agency, I had this like renewed sense of, I'm going to be a voice for these victims. Like, I want to be a detective. That's what I got into this career for.
Mm-hmm.
Patrol was never a part of it, even though I loved my patrol time. And so I remember that interview specifically with the chief, and he was one of those, what's your goals? And I said, I want to be a detective. I've already done this patrol thing. So however long I got to be on patrol here to prove I can do patrol, my goal is detective, and that's what I want to do. And then somehow we had 5 homicides my first year there, and that was unheard of for that tiny ass little
Man,
town. And I was
hit
like,
the ground running, right?
sorry for bringing that in. um, but I was on patrol then. But I mean, every single homicide, I stepped up to, how can I help? What can I do? What part of the canvas can I do? Like, oh, hey, I was thinking about this. And it was something people so close to the case wasn't thinking about because they were so tunnel visioned in on what they had. And so, I was able to help out with some of those. I got sent to, we have a metro squad here. We have a lot of small agencies. So say you have a homicide, you don't know the suspect, this team will form together and help you for like a week. You can get extensions and things like that, but it's a metropolitan team that comes together and everybody helps out. So I thought I had freaking made it when I got sent to that training on patrol. I was like, oh my gosh, here we go. Got detective the next couple months or so, and really figured out I loved being a detective, but not for crimes that weren't against people. I was like, please, I don't care about
Mm,
these things over here. Like, let me focus on
sure.
these people that I'm trying to speak for. They're either not willing to speak for themselves or they can't. They're dead. And now somebody has to
Mm-hmm.
tell their story and this version of what happened to them. So I did that for a little bit, but while I was in there, we had a change of command into that unit. And it was very apparent that person did not belong in that unit over that unit. And
Mm,
all 6 of us either got promoted or left the department. We scattered. We were like, there, no, this job is hard enough. We're not dealing with this. I saw the need for leadership, which I kind of touched on a little bit ago. And so I put in for sergeant. I got sergeant. I was like, holy shit, that's something I never saw coming. But here we are. We're going to
there you
embrace
go.
this and become the leader I never had. And that lesson, that mindset is something we all need to take. If you're seeing something done in a way that you don't like, or you think it could be done differently, and you keep hearing that it's always been done this way, BS, put in. You cannot sit there and
Mm-hmm.
bitch about something if you're not going to put yourself in a position to actually make changes. So that was a lesson there. And then year and a half into sergeant, and I had a nagging wrist injury, but on my way to calls, I would find myself like ripping the brace off so that nobody would see there was a weakness there.
Mm,
I was a fairly hands-on person, even as a sergeant. I had a newer shift of like under 6 months, and they were very timid about going hands-on when it needed to be done. And that's just, I'm huge on officer safety. So if somebody needed hands, they got hands, but my
mm-hmm.
wrist wasn't allowing me to do that the way I should be able to do that. And when it finally got to, oh shit, I can't draw my gun, like the angle of trying to put your hand back and draw your gun, finally got to a point where it's like, I gotta have this looked at. Like, I can't keep coming out here and doing this, especially without the brace. I had it looked at. The surgeon or the doctor was like, yeah, you're definitely going to need a surgery, but it's simple. Like 3 months, you're going to be good as new. I was like, okay, sure. It's still winter out. It's disgusting here. Like, let's get it done so we're ready for summer. And 3 months went by. 6 months went by. We're still no better. I was like, can I get like a second opinion here? So I did. And the second surgeon said, well, I mean, it looks like they did what they could. If I go in there, it's a very good possibility I'm hitting a nerve because it's your hand. It's very small in there, I guess. And she said, so you could either lose all the feeling in your hand, which is my dominant hand, or you can deal with what you're dealing with. So I made the decision to deal with what I'm dealing with. I would rather feel it, I guess, than not feel it at all. And it
Hmm.
was the ultimate, well, I guess my career is done. I can't go back out there less than 100%. And locally, starting around that time, that was in 2016, we had 7 officers killed here locally, which had not been a thing. It had not hit us. And it was just like, well, if I can't be 100%, I can't even draw my gun. Like, what point is
Yeah.
it? And I would never forgive myself if something happened to someone because I couldn't act or perform. So the decision was made to turn in my resignation. And as much as I had to put that paperwork in, I don't feel like I had a choice.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a big thing, and I appreciate you sharing that. It's a central theme in so many conversations here, but it's checking that ego, right? Like just being
Hmm.
real with yourself. I mean, hats off to you. I mean, you sound like exactly the type of leader that people need, and the type of mentor and coach, and you're a coach and mentor now. Certainly a leader in the space. So all to say that that type of decisive, I mean, not like it was just like right away you knew what you wanted to do, but when everything was laid out, that's a very responsible choice. But in one form and another, we all have to combat that, and we all know people and folks that probably should have that real talk with themselves, how they're doing the job, whether they can do it to the level they may be expected or need to do it. And so I appreciate that for sure. After that, did you have any idea what you wanted to do, where you wanted to go?
No,
Where'd you
absolutely
land?
not. And I was off. So my surgery, I was off, I want to say February 1st through, I think, like November 11th, I think is the day I put my papers in. So 8 or 9 months. And that entire time in my head, I was going back to work. Like that was in my brain. Like there was never a chance. So like when I say to people, like I didn't prepare, I didn't prepare. Like I, I literally thought this whole time, yeah, I'm going back. I'm going back. I'm going back.
Mhm.
And then it just wasn't. When it finally became a reality, I was like, seriously, what do I do though? Like, I have a whole lot of life left to live and work. I've got to do something. And I remember sitting there scrolling Indeed. I didn't use LinkedIn back then, but Indeed, all the different job boards and being like, boring, 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 boring. None of this sounds like anything purposeful or like that I would want to do. And I remember just taking job after job after job to pay bills. And some people are like, I could never hop around. One, if you've never been there, you don't know. And it wasn't like my goal to go into
Yeah.
any of these jobs and think, oh, I'm not going to be here. It was, I need my bills paid. I'm going to do this job. And what I ended up learning was a lot about myself, a lot about things that I didn't want to do, and really just some different industries that brought up some interesting opportunities. The first job I got outside of law enforcement, actually, the first company to take a chance on me, and I had applications like crazy out there. I did the whole spray and pray thing, like, easy apply, sure, whatever it is,
Mhm.
let's see if we get a call. Not ideal,
Yeah.
guys. Have a plan, have a plan, figure out a route. It makes it a whole lot easier. But it was TD Ameritrade, a financial industry company that I had zero desire to work in the financial industry. I do not love finances in any way, shape, or form. But they were the first people to take a chance on me. They were the first people in an interview. I was also that person. I didn't stray from my law enforcement experience. I'm like, hey, this is like the experience I have is my entire adult life. This is what I've got to lean on. And these are examples of how I can utilize that here. So thankfully I
Yeah.
could do that part. And they're like, no, it's actually really refreshing to hear a different perspective and like see how somebody outside this industry thinks. So I was like, okay. And I remember it was a trainee program. So I literally spent all day, every day in a classroom learning about financial industry, taking these damn tests to have licenses to do this. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? The day I passed the Series 7 test, and anybody that's in the financial industry knows what a freaking treacherous beast that is, I cried. I passed it by 1 point. Like, I've never
Wow.
celebrated a C so hard in all my life. And I remember having my eyes covered and hitting the button. And when I peeked through my fingers, was like, oh my God. And I just started bawling. I was like, 6 hours of a test after this long of training for this. Like, holy shit, I did it. And that was the first, hmm, I really can do anything I want to do. I just
Mhm.
have to actually put in the effort toward it. And thank God my husband, we had moved up to that area for him to take another job. And he was like, yeah, I don't think this is working out. Let's go back to Kansas City. And I was like, oh, thank God. I don't have to do this job. But I had the training and I had proved to
Yeah.
myself I could do it. So man, I still sat in that, like, kind of, let's just take whatever for another year or so. I found a direct sales opportunity, which, don't roll your eyes, guys. I know it is what it is. But I found a direct sales opportunity where really all I wanted to do was go along this fitness journey with these ladies because I saw the results they were getting. I saw the lives they were building. And I was like, huh, I kind of want that. And I've been watching for 2 years them do it. Why can I not do this? So
Sure.
I jumped in, and 90 days into this fitness journey, I was a completely different person mentally and physically. And again, proved to myself, holy shit, I can do whatever I want if I just put in the work. If you guys are catching the theme here, put in the work and you're going to get where you want to go. You're going to get the results. And that's the first time I got a taste of like what coaching looked like and how you being an example can really set the tone and create this domino effect for people around you. And it was the first time I got to help people who actually wanted help, which was a completely different outlook than the police department where you're having to help these people. They're like forced, they're trying to not get your help. And these people are coming to you like, Jess, I need help with this. And you're like, shit, I can do that. Let's do this together and walk this journey together. And that was the first taste of that I got. Fast forward several years later, I'm miserable in whatever job I was in at the time, talking to a client and who had turned friend. And she tells me about a CEO transition coach. And I just kind of looked at her funny. I was like, what the hell is that? And she said, this lady literally helps people go from being a CEO, being in the boardroom every day, being in charge of like these big ass companies to just being a normal, regular person at home. Like now you're a mom, now you're a dad, like
Hmm.
integrating back into family life. And I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I can help ex cops. Like it had never dawned on me. I had mulled over two different direct sales companies. I loved the idea. I loved coaching people through things, but I was like, I can't tie the message in my heart to whatever these products are. I could never figure that out. I loved the products and the community. But I was like, how do I do this? And when she said that, it was like the biggest light bulb moment of, oh my God, you can help ex cops through this transition
Mm.
because you had nobody, you had no resources. You literally just had to like fight down and bear it all. And so I did. And I was like, oh my gosh. I ran home from work that day. I created like a form that people could fill out and tell me, how long were you in law enforcement? What ranks did you have? How long have you been out? Have you adapted? What were your initial feelings getting out? And I sent it to every cop I knew personally who had gotten out. And when I got those forms back, thankfully they filled them out. When I got them back, it was so validating to see that I wasn't alone in how I felt and that all these people I would have never guessed felt these certain feelings when they got out felt a certain way. The guilt, the shame, the guilt, the shame, the sadness, the anxiety over what's new and what's coming. And I knew right then and there, I was like, this is something we need to talk about. This is something we need to do.
Yeah. That's so good. I love several things you said that I want to revisit. It was all good, but
I was
several
like, I'm
things
long
that I
winded sometimes. Sorry about that.
no. I need to take notes sometimes just to revisit some things. And one thing I think was the biggest deal was you reflected on it earlier where you were the Sarge that you didn't have, right? You were the leader, the mentor that you didn't have. And then you recognize that in your transition, you're like, man, I didn't have this resource. I don't even know it exists. And then you're like, I can fill this void, right? And so I think that's a flip on just things that we always talk about, which are like mentorship and the power of that. You oftentimes are the parent that you could have used better, right? It's not to disparage our parents, but
Yep.
it's just to say, like, in reflection, what would have resonated with you. And so that's leadership at every level, whether you're staying in the job or whatever role you have. So I love that. And there's also the notion of like finding things that you don't want to do, right? Like we were talking about a lot of things that resonate with you.
Mhm.
I think that's the power of dabbling, and whether it's a side hustle or a hobby. Sometimes you don't really know until you start putting some ideas down on paper or you start learning something. Whether it's like, man, I love the idea of being a butcher, just working in a butcher shop and like learning this whole trade and this physical skill. But then if you started looking into, just do some research, like look at what it takes to be one, and look at like versus being like a meat processor, and then like what certifications and like the pay and like the schedules, and then you might be like, sounds good, or you might really quickly be like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
And so maybe you didn't even buy a set of carving knives, you just looked into it, you're like, yeah, I'm going to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
So I love that. Just as far as figuring out what you want to do. Some folks that have been listening in to me know that that's essentially how I found myself in law enforcement was, through adolescence, crossing things off of a list and then recognizing what you did. And so many of us that are in this clearly is just wanting this desire to serve something bigger. And then also the empowerment piece. I mean, we talk about health and fitness a lot, and then just that recognition of how empowering that ownership can be, where we're not even really talking about that on this topic, but how relevant it was to you
Oh,
to
yes.
figure out like that confidence where, hey, you can do whatever it is you seek out to do, because you have this very categorical thing that you just set yourself towards, and then you recognize how much is possible. So yeah, I just wanted to revisit those things real quick.
Yeah, and on that topic there are so many things that fitness has taught me, and I know there are some people who just absolutely roll their eyes when you talk about fitness and how important it is, but it is so absolutely crucial to so many areas of your life. And for me, the physical part is like the byproduct of that. It's more the mental
Yeah.
part that I get, the clarity and the focus I get from doing that, from proving to myself time and time and time again that I can do it. Because it was through that 90-day-ish fitness journey that I learned to let go of the perfection mindset that a lot of us have as cops, the progress over perfection. Cliche or not, like that is so freaking crucial to develop that mindset. Getting rid of the all or nothing mindset. Well, if I can't do it all, or if I can't do it the way it's laid out on this program, then I'm going to restart, or I'm just going to quit. No, my wrist literally didn't allow me to do half of those workouts the way they were intended to be done. So I had to learn to adapt, or
Hmm.
not only adapt, but also, hey, Jess, what you used to be able to do, you can no longer do, but focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. If you stay stuck in that, you're going to stay miserable. But focus on what you can do. So if she was doing some kind of crazy ass complex movement, I was like, what is the point of this? I would break it down and I would do the first half of it, and then I would do the second half. I didn't use weights the entire time. And I will tell you, I got the best results of my life doing that program without weights when everybody else is lifting heavier each week and doing the things. I'm like, well, shit, no kidding. Like, it just opened my eyes to so many different things. And then when you were talking about, if you're considering this trade or that trade, one, go spend a day or a part of a day. Like, actually go make connections and talk to these people. See if you can do a sit-in, if you will. But I've been talking to a lot of people about this lately, and the importance of like a buffer job when you're getting out of law enforcement. Nobody likes the idea of that. I don't want to say nobody. A lot of people don't like the idea of that because, again, the next thing needs to be the it thing, and it needs to be the
Yeah.
next thing I retire from. But you are one person as a cop, whether you're going to admit that or not. It's going to take some self reflection, but you're one person as a cop. And the person you become when you no longer have it, especially initially, is just kind of this, oh God, what? And then the person you become for years after that, the person I was 8 years ago is nowhere near the person I was a year ago, is nowhere near the person I am today. And I think it's important that we realize we are ever evolving, always. Like, we're never going to be the same person again. And so many of us want to stay in that stuck victim mentality. This is just all I am, versus like challenging ourselves to keep growing and like, oh, it's scary, but I'm going to dip my toe in that and see what happens. Oh, well, look at this opportunity I never expect. Oh, look at this opportunity. You just have to be open to possibilities. There are so many people I've talked to who are like, yeah, I had like 6 years till retirement and I wasn't going to do it. And then this opportunity came. I was like, holy shit, I guess I'm retiring. And it was just, it was mind blowing to them that they saw something they never saw coming. And every single room you get yourself into is a whole new room of possibilities. Don't hold yourself back. Make those introductions, make those connections. Be open to the possibility they may have a connection you need later. And this is why everyone's not an asshole. Like, stop treating them like it. You never know who you're
Hmm.
going to need at some point down the road.
Yeah. It's just building connection, right? And like
Mhm.
some people might they might, kind of cringe or like shy away from this notion of networking because of the associations, or like, well, I just don't do things just to build connections. Like, well, that's just like the world. Think about, start with just your family and your friendships. Those are all relationships. Think of your coworkers and the people that you get along great with, where ride or die. And then there's the other people where you're like, they're okay in the room, right? And there are other people like, I'd rather not. It's just meeting people, right? Being available to learn. Just people are willing and eager to help, just like you're willing and eager to help, right? So step outside of yourself. That's a lot of the things I hear. And in your explanation there reminded me of something that you say frequently on your show, which is probably the nails on the chalkboard,
Oh,
which is, I'm just a cop.
dude,
Like,
I
what
hear
do
that.
I know? What could I do? And I had that, like, as a young sergeant, I had that officer that so burnt out, and he would just keep saying, like, I'm just a cop. I'm just a cop. What else could I do? I don't have a formal education. And that stuckness. And it was so corrosive to himself first and then
Mhm.
everyone else around, where it's just like, man, if you can, I figured if I could help him out of that stuckness or just that mindset, how much better he would be, for himself. And, I would tell him pretty straightforward, like, man, like, I don't know if this job is serving you anymore. Like,
Right.
when you're great, you're great. And when you're not, you're definitely not. And I hate seeing this on you, man. So I think that that's such an impactful thing to recognize. If you do feel or sense that in yourself, or if you have that self-talk, I'll be quick to label that's negative self-talk. You're not just a cop.
Yeah.
And just because the new and the different is scary, that's why, take on some of these things that me and Jess are talking about. Get back into classes, do a shadow, right? Just like you could do a shadow at work, right? You could shadow detectives or pick someone's brain really quickly. You'll lean in or you'll lean away. That's cool. That's part of the process. So I love that.
And on
Um,
that, guys,
yeah.
stop with the excuses about like, well, my department won't let me go sit with. Then contact them and go have dinner with them. Like, find a
Mm,
way to make it happen. If you
yeah.
can't actually sit with them on the job because staffing, we all know, is shit right now. But if
Yeah.
your department isn't allowing you that, or your department isn't allowing you to go to training for budgetary reasons or whatever, sorry, but invest in your freaking self. Like, take your days off. You've
Yeah.
got time. Go pay for this. It's
Mm-hmm.
gonna suck, but pay for it and
Yeah.
go enjoy the shit out of it so that you can better yourself and get whatever skills it is you need. And you get
Mm,
time off work. Like, go enjoy it.
yeah.
You're making connections in that room. Utilize it.
I love that. And I think that, especially when we talk about leadership and culture, I think that the leadership has an obligation to these things. I think that is the standard. It's kind of the gold standard, but I think it should be the standard as far as career development, paying for training, this and that, getting you the best gear, what have you. That's not facts. That's not everywhere. In
Right.
some places, really, communities don't have a lot of money and like the salaries aren't very high. And like, yeah, I can keep beating the drum and saying, hey, we should uh, show our appreciation for our cops better. But at the same time, to your point, we have to remember oftentimes that it is what it is. There can be people fighting that fight, but what I have the environment, I can't just sit around and wait
Hmm.
and then blame someone else, right? And I love that because think back to before you had this job. What would you have been willing to do on your own time? Ride along, research, certainly, like hopefully, you did those things, which made you appreciate it in the process and the development to get there to earn that spot. I mean, working out on duty, I say it should be a requisite. A department should be allowed to work out on duty. However, if you're not because it's too busy or you're not allowed to, that doesn't remove the obligation from yourself to do it on your own time, right? So
Right.
I think that's a very similar flip. Yeah, invest in yourself. I know so many. We all know cops that spend a lot of their own time to learn. I knew a guy that would just, and this was not an agency thing. Like everyone told him when they saw him in the office, like, "Hey, you're putting in overtime, right?" Because we knew he wasn't, but he was just like, "No, I don't want to have the question asked of me when I'm working this." Like, and he was like one of the busiest guys through the whole shift, one of the biggest producers, because he wanted to build his detective resume, but he didn't want it to come at a cost of someone saying, "Well, man, you're putting in a lot of overtime, like not finishing your cases on duty." So he just wanted to dig, be active, and then write up on his own time. I mean, that's a personal choice.
Yeah.
Same thing with shadowing, going to training. How many people pay their own way to go to tactical or canine training just to build their resume? Like a lot, right? So,
And different
yeah,
things you
take
can do.
ownership.
I mean, take the initiative, be proactive. If your department is saying we don't have money for this or we don't have money for that, do the research. Can you get a grant for it? Go look at
Yeah.
grants out there that are available for maybe your agency.
Hmm.
Get yourself used to writing proposals and like not just bitching, like, no, come to somebody in your chain of command with, here's the problem, here's a solution I found. Like, you did the
Hmm.
work, you found this, here's the proposal of that solution, and here. They don't have to do anything then. They just have to either sign it or not and send it
Yeah.
up. But then you're getting grant writing experience, you're getting proposal writing
Yep.
experience. These are all things you can then put on a resume. We've had so many friends of like my husband and I's, they wanted a better gym or something like that. They literally went out and found a way to make this better gym happen through grants and things like that. And it's like, oh shit. And then you're proud of it. You're a little more bought in. You're like, you're allowing yourself to have that pride again and have like, oh my gosh, I did that type of a
Yeah.
attitude.
Yeah, no, that's great. Grants are intimidating, just like your first warrant's intimidating. But
Oh,
then once you do a couple, you're like, oh, it's a template. It's not hard. It's tedious,
yeah,
and tedious is okay, right?
yeah.
Just some work, some time. Um, I want to ask you a couple things. So, like, what are some? I mean, we talked a lot about philosophy and how to approach things, and what people may consider when people are wanting to initiate, and maybe they're doing some of these things. Are there things that you suggest people do, like write an updated resume or refine that, or specific roles, or how people may explain specific roles, like how they would approach that kind of thing when they start considering looking at a different job?
Yeah, so I will tell you right up front, I am not a resume expert, and I just found ChatGPT not too long ago. Good Lord, that thing is so smart. He's like my best friend now. But there are also
Efficient.
services
Yeah.
out there, and here's the deal: you cannot be an expert in everything. If you're looking at your resume and you're like, "Wow, this kind of sucks," reach out there. And guys, no, not everything out here is free. ChatGPT is free, but services where somebody is giving you their time and perfecting something for you and giving you something that you can use and hopefully land that next thing, that's going to cost money. I just talked to Sheepdog Resume yesterday morning, and man, I just fell in love with them even more. I'd been sending them people, but knowing them, knowing their mission, knowing the purpose behind what they do, I'm like, my God, like what a service that they are providing for these resumes. And like their their best feeling is after that client calls and says, "Thanks to your resume, I just got this job." And it's one of those, like, even for me as a coach, when somebody lands that new job, I'm like, oh my God, it's like a baby for me. Like
Yeah.
they got something and it's like, wow, that's so exciting. I will tell you the number one thing when you are looking at transitioning, and for retirees, it's easy, you're retiring and you have to, more than likely, but knowing your why you are getting out of law enforcement. And I mean, not just the because I'm pissed off or, well, it's time to go, or like the base service level why. I like to tell people every time you answer that question, ask why again and do that at least 5 times backwards. Get to that root
Mhm.
cause of why you're actually leaving. Don't just say my mental health. Well, what about my mental health? Answer that question. Do the hard
Mhm.
work, do the time to figure these things out. Okay, well, I can't sleep at night and maybe I have whatever it is. Okay, how did that, just keep asking why backwards and figure it out. If you just use a service level why for anything, whether you're leaving or getting into something, you're going to give up the second it gets hard. If you know the hardcore, like, nope, I am solid on this why. And the people at your department are going to be like, dude, why are you leaving? Like, what? You still got this long. Like, people projecting their insecurities about this transition onto you. And if you don't have a strong why, you're going to give in and you're like, okay, fine, I'll say I'm stuck, I'm miserable. And you're not going to be able to stand up and say, I don't care what other people think. This is what I have to do for myself, for my family, blah, 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 blah. So know that really deep why you're getting out. And then, like I said earlier, do not spray and pray out here. Like, talk to somebody, let somebody help you figure out, like, what skills do you have? What skills do you want to develop? Which ones do you actually want to lean into? Because we all have a shit ton of skills. Doesn't mean you have to lean into all of them, but figure out, which ones. And a couple things I like to have people do, again, to that just a cop BS story we tell ourselves, is list out, take 20 minutes and make this list of identity, purpose, passion, and skills. Just have it on a sheet of paper. And in that 15-20 minutes, write out as many things as you identify as, whether that's mom, dad, brother, sister, cop, ex cop, confident, not confident, whatever it is you identify as, list those things, everything that makes you feel a sense of purpose, list those in that column. Passions, you talked about it earlier. Like, what in high school did you love to do? What as a kid did you love to do? What did you try to learn and maybe gave up on too soon earlier, but you still really love it? All those things that bring you some sense of joy. And then the skills. Again, we have so many skills. List them out and then really look at all of those. And maybe if you're lucky, there's something that kind of aligns jig-jagged across all of those where you're like, huh, how can I put all of that into play and actually feel purpose behind what I'm doing again? And what jobs are out there? Use Google, use ChatGPT, use people, use your community and be like, hey, is there something where I could put all of this together and have a career that I'm proud of when I get out of here? And maybe it won't align across there, but again, having yourself in these rooms to have these conversations, maybe somebody's seeing something in you as you're telling your story or as you're talking about different things. I've had so many people say, well, I want this, but they do not light up at all when they're talking about said job. Then we're over
Mhm.
here and they're talking about just whatever. I'm like, do you realize you're like lighting up right now about this right here? And I know you might not know what that looks like or how you're going to make that happen, but that's not what's important. This is something we need to dig into, and this is the direction we need to start looking at um, and going in. So I think I answered your question in a very roundabout
Yeah,
way.
you absolutely did. Yeah, you did. In so many different kind of the spider web of ways. And one thing is just that specialization, right? Outsource. Like you already have a full time, more than full time job. You have a full time family. You have all your obligations, and you need to decompress. You need to take care of your wellness, right? In whatever way that is. So to add on one more thing to become a resume writing expert and your own career coach, like that can be so much. So I it's not like my original thought, but I recognize it a lot at times where cops are cheap and they want to be frugal. Like, and hey, like you got to stretch that dollar, but at the same time, recognize like these experts. Maybe start with online resources and then see about hiring someone, maybe a specialist, right? Like law enforcement to private sector resume expert. Like that is what they do. Then they're going to be the expert,
Right.
and so lean on those. The other thing I wanted to expand on was, kind of when you're talking about recognizing your networks. If people are like, well, all I know is cops, right? Like, and that's okay, right? Like, it's somewhere to start, but you know who's attached to all those cops? Cop families and cop spouses, right?
Mhm.
So if that is your circle of trust, is the people around you, just look outside of that. Like every people work in every industry, right around us, right? So I'll share this. I don't know if I spoke about this before, but following my 2020 advice to my crew of like, hey, you need to look outside, and hey, if you could probably do a lot of self-reflection and development if you start thinking more critically about this. I flipped it on myself and I was like, what would I do? Blue Grit's kind of a part of that, right? Like putting out fitness and things I really cared about. But in that exercise, I recognized that if I was to become like a full-time personal trainer, whatever, I found that doing things online and coaching a couple people remotely, it wasn't the sauce, right? Like I loved the feedback and how people felt empowered and how they're seeing progress, and I was seeing it remotely. But I found that if I did do that as part of my gig or my whole gig, it wouldn't be my whole gig. I needed something else. But then two, I needed to do something in person
Yeah.
to really get that coaching element, being a strength conditioning um, certified coach. Like it just wasn't enough just to say, hey, do these movements and send me a video and I'll kind of tell you what I see.
Right.
At the same time, I did apply for at least one job in the private sector just because I was like, hey, this is uncomfortable, so I need to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I felt like I got slapped in the face because I felt so overqualified for it, right? I was a patrol sergeant, civil disturbance team leader, I had all these different hats and extra specialty experience. And then when I put in for this, it's a large national security company as kind of this like training manager. Um, the pay wasn't great, and I was like, I should be able to land this, right? But I had insight from a law enforcement spouse, someone I knew, that said, hey, because you don't have this specific, like you've never been a training sergeant, so you really kind of can't get this role. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like I've been an FTO, I literally train my guys every day. She's like, yeah, it doesn't matter, right? So the keyword and kind of the algorithms that get into resumes, but I mean, how impactful to learn it out of order that way, and learn those reflections. So,
Yeah, I will
um,
tell you, no one out here cares about your law enforcement experience. Like what you did, the titles you held, it does not matter over here. If you cannot translate how what you did and the roles you had can help this company over here, they're not even going to give you a second look. You're probably not even making it through the ATS system if you didn't have
mhm,
somebody write your resume and you're hitting the literal keywords in their job
yeah,
description. And that's something a lot of people underestimate. And I know I did. I was just lucky to land jobs, I guess. But if you're not hitting their, you have to tailor this damn resume to every company you're putting in for. So when I tell
yeah,
you like
every
this
role,
spray and
right?
pray doesn't work, like you
Mhm,
need to literally focus in on a role, maybe two, like just to have some options here, maybe two, and then have a resume for each one of those. But man, every company you're applying to, you're tailoring parts of that resume to that company. And they're going to know if you didn't, especially say you do get through and you get to an interview. If you did not research this company and you don't know enough about them, like you're just getting a door slammed in your face. They're not going to care what you've done prior. And it can be a huge slap in the face to anybody like coming from law
yeah.
enforcement. Like,
It was humbling though. It was
yeah,
humbling, and like so, and I got what I asked for, which was a recognition of what I needed to work on and the things I need to be aware of, and I learned a ton. Right, so just even that, my view from the private sector from my wife in corporate and startups is just the networking is key. A lot of
Hmm.
times when a job comes open, they already have final candidates. Like they already know,
Right.
because wouldn't you rather work with someone you know, right? Um, and the flip again to back to the cops is when you find out that someone in your close circles, right, like a family friend or something, is applying for cop stuff. If you found out that they didn't reach out to you, you'd be like, "What are you doing? I will save you a lot of heartache in your failed oral boards just talking through, right? Like you don't have to be like a recruiter or anything like that or someone sitting on the boards, but you just have so many anecdotes of how they can present the things they can think about because you are an SME." And the same thing is just like coming from being a recruiting sergeant, how many people said, "Well, this doesn't matter," right? So we're going back to that. I'm just a cop.
Right.
They're like, "Well, all I did was, I'm just a teacher." I'm like, "Oh my god, you'd be a great cop because I already know you're patient. You work with kids. You give a damn." And so sometimes it's the person in the industry can, through conversation,
Mhm.
hear all the things and recognize all the skills and traits that would be so beneficial, right? Um, you have a candidate that coaches kids on the side. Like
Right.
I love that as a recruiting sergeant. You have someone that studied this in college or had a background in finance. I'm like, oh
Hmm.
my gosh, we need way more of that because a lot of cops admittedly hate it.
Right.
So all these things where they're like, oh, all I did was banking my whole life. I'm like, great, come on in, let's
Yeah.
talk, right? So, so I love that, and that's kind of something that perked up from what you said.
Yeah, and something on the networking that you touched on, you've mentioned even a spider web a couple of times, and your network is so much bigger than you think it is. Like oftentimes, again, and I've said tunnel vision about 5 times now, but we are so tunnel visioned in on like who we live with and who we go to work with. Like that is like all we can see, and we don't realize all of those people know people. So
Mm-hmm.
another thing I like to have people do is a list of people, at least 5 in each of these categories, that your friends, your family, your coworkers or ex-coworkers, your service providers, think your doctor, your dentist, the person who works on your car, these people that you interact for your own services of some kind, and then people you met on the job, whether it's a business owner, a parent of someone, the principal at the school, the teachers at the school, if you're SRO, all of the, you meet so many people throughout this job and you just kind of discount them a lot of the time, but you're like, no, seriously, like, okay, let me talk to them. And it doesn't have to be, hey, I'm getting out of law enforcement, like this secret thing, like, hey, at some point I'm going to get out of this job and I need connections. I'm really interested in who you know that does, A, B, or C. Or do you know anyone who does A? Ask the question, like, get the network
Yeah.
built now so that when you are faced with this, whether you want to or not leave, you at least have connections in different realms of your life. And you're like, hey, so yeah, this is happening. What can you tell me? Like, what can I learn? What can I do? All the things.
Yeah. I love it. Well, Jess, thank you so much. You covered so much ground. You hit on so much that I think every cop, every first responder needs to think about, like all these things, just for to help create balance and help create some planning and responsible thinking. But at the same time, for people that are ready and they're like, yeah, I don't know how long I want to do this. Maybe I do want a second, or maybe this is going to be my third career before retirement. A lot of tangible things they can work on their own, and certainly hit you up for individualized um, work throughs, right? Individualized coaching. Because again, like we said earlier, you can only do so much on your own, and it's great to do the
Mhm.
work, but then you need an expert to kind of firm some things out. So, Jess, is there anything you want to close with? And please tell listeners where they can find you, how they can get in contact and learn more.
Yeah, I will do a shameless plug here in a second, but I am over on Instagram, underscore next shift underscore. Gotta love how they make you title yourself over there. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
also on LinkedIn as Jessica Flores. But I am also launching, coming up in October, a membership community to where it's not one on one. There are so many times where cops want the help and they're just not willing to pay either that one-on-one price, or they're not willing to meet one-on-one. But man, if you get them in a community of their brothers and sisters, they feel so much more comfortable, especially when there are some who have been through this transition already and willing to lend that hand backwards and help. And hey, these are the pitfalls that we navigated. Here's how we do it. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's going to be a coaching platform. It'll be a membership monthly, come and go as you want. But every week there will be a coaching call with myself or another expert. I've already got resume experts lined up. I've already got people from different private sectors that are lined up to talk about certain things, and then a Q&A. And then every week we'll have a power hour where those things where you say, I don't have time to do this, whether it's writing your book, whether it is applying to jobs, whether it is updating your resume, searching for jobs, you're coming into this set hour and that is what you're working on for this hour. And then you can move on with your week and you can go on and, do what you need to do. But I have found that this community aspect is huge for those of us who have left. It's the number one thing people say they miss when they get out of law enforcement. And if I can facilitate that, I'm part of something bigger than myself for those of us who have gotten out, and be there for these people coming through this transition, whenever it may be, then let's do it. And so that's coming in October. And I think that will be far more beneficial to anybody looking to get out of this career.
Yeah, I love it. I love it for so many reasons. One is that fellowship, right? The community of giving and receiving feedback and advice. And yeah, I totally see it, because you see it on LinkedIn sometimes, and sometimes in the comments on Instagram, less so, less productive and
Yeah.
professional sometimes. But you put something up, or someone has a comment, and then it bleeds into this other, and you see some people take so much time just
Mhm.
like really curating like several paragraphs on their thought and like really how they want to help someone. They're just not just, but they're a cop from somewhere over there where you may have never, probably would never meet
Right.
otherwise. So I love that idea. Certainly another option, right? Because there's different tools for different people in different places.
And
And
it's not a
again, I want to
Facebook
plug.
group, guys. It's off of social media completely. It'll get us away
Oh,
from
there
the
you go. Yeah,
cluster
yeah,
mess that is social media.
yeah. No, I feel that too. And for sure, check out Jess's podcast, because you hear these anecdotes and these very personal accounts of somebody that left law enforcement for X, Y, or Z, some of their trials, some of their
Mhm.
trips, and it's paying that forward. And you'll hear, for me, I heard a lot of the just true like human aspect of like, yeah, I was terrified, but then I tried this, I tried that, and where they found success, and then where they found what I would just called like the unknown um, benefits, right? It's all the perks and all the recognition, because sometimes it's not just the stress, but it could be just different lifestyle things where you are just resigned to this thing.
Mhm.
But then recognizing that there could be something that is just going to serve you so much better at a different aspect of your life. And
100%.
so I would just check out that show. It's fantastic just to get your mind wrapped around some other perspectives.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
This was a blast. I love talking about this stuff, and I know we could go
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Jess. We'll talk soon.
Yep.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.